Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everyone.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer insights and ideas for how emerging small and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can establish and grow their business.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean all aspects involved in establishing and growing brands across channels and platforms. On our show, we bring on guests that are brand founders, leaders, investors, as well as all kinds of suppliers to these emerging brands that are subject matter experts to share their unique insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please follow the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. Let's get to today's episode. Since 1994, the Emerson Group has been the trusted partner to brands, retailers, suppliers, and the CPG industry. Their people are CPG professionals and omnichannel commerce experts. They have built a fully integrated infrastructure with a suite of services and capabilities focused on launching and accelerating the growth of health, wellness, and beauty brands. Powered by their proprietary Omega AI data technology platform, which utilizes a brand's insights and data analytics to create a brand's go-to-market strategy, optimize their omnichannel distribution, build marketing plans, and optimize supply chain. The Emerson Group infrastructure and capabilities serve brands in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. To learn more, visit their website at www.emersongroup.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of The Road to Retail. Thanks for joining us today. There he is, my friends, Tracy Priest. Tracy, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic today, Bruce. It's Friday. It's been a great week here at Road to Retail, and we've got a great episode today, a great guest. And I think this is going to be a really helpful episode for our small emerging brands. I know we're very passionate about this. So tell us a little bit about who we have today.
Yeah, so true. Today we're joined by Sean Ogar, who is co-founder and CEO of Big Chalk, which is a detailed analytics and research firm that Sean's going to spend a lot of time telling us about their various services. But Sean, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on this. I love your guys' podcast.
Well, thank you very much. So, Sean, before we dive into the specifics around Big Chalk and some of the offerings that you guys are in the process of launching to help emerging and challenger brands, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you've landed in your current seat?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I've been one of those graybeards. I've been in the consumer packaged goods retail analytics space now for 36 years. It sounds weird to say that, but it's 36 years. First starting out on the brand side, for companies like General Mills, Ralston Purina when it was a standalone company, Pepsi. And then on the data and analytics side, I spent a bunch of years at IRI, which is now Circana, and Nielsen, which is now Nielsen IQ. 9 years ago, exactly 9 years ago, this week is Big Chalk Analytics' 9-year anniversary. I co-founded Big Chalk, and we started Big Chalk 9 years ago with a very simple premise. We saw a need in the market around providing platinum quality consulting and analytics services at price points that are more approachable for consumer packaged goods companies. Our secret sauce, our superpower is the curated, vetted consulting network that we've built over the last 9 years. We've got over 1,500 consultants in our network, 95+% are US based, and they have and bring expertise across the wide spectrum of data and analytics. And our network averages 20+ years of experience in CPG and retail. So I'm not casting aspersions here, but no recent college grads whose knowledge base is more theory than practical. The people that you work with from Big Chalk are practitioners and have been doing it for a lot of years, for a lot of companies across this industry. You get the best the industry has to offer when you work with Big Chalk.
That's
That
awesome.
sounds good to me. Tracy, let's kick it off.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we really dive into the meat of the discussion, and with our audience being, small emerging and challenger brands, talk to us a little bit about why winning at the shelf these days and getting shelf space is just so difficult with retailers.
To put it simply, the battle to get through the shelf space funnel is a real battle that every brand has to fight.
Right.
I envy the people that launch brands, build brands, bring brands to market, that go out there and, with their passion, they work to get their product in front of consumers so that, people can buy their product, put it in their shelf, put it in their fridge. What do I mean when I say battle? Let me just give a couple quick stats. Okay, these are stats I'm sure everybody kind of knows. So, but I think it is worth repeating. First off, there are over 1 million UPCs that are available in the marketplace today. Period.
Crazy.
Okay. An average brick and mortar store carries about 45,000 to 60,000, but I'm going to stick at that 45,000 range. Add to that, every year, 30,000 new products launch. Okay, so the number of items in the store, every year you almost get the same number of products launching into the marketplace. And the reality is, and all of you brand owners know this because you deal with it every day, retailers will only take on approximately 1,500 of those 30,000. Okay. And we know less than 2% survive 2 years on the shelf. Okay. And so it is a very difficult marketplace to get space. And quite frankly, it is a very stressful marketplace. It puts stress on the retailer buyers, to make decisions. They see so many products and they know the success rate or failure rate, depending on what angle you want to take. And it just creates stress for them to make sure that they pick the right ones, right? And let's be honest, stress for them translates to risk, pure and simple, right? Retailers don't need more products, okay? They need proof of products that will win.
So that leads us into a very interesting, the meat of the discussion today, but let's set the table there. So folks, those of you that may recall listening to the recap Tracy and I did of the Founders Innovation Day in New York in December, many of the nation's largest brick and mortar retailers spoke at this event, which in the audience was full of emerging brands. It was a really great show put on by ECRM and their partners. But every single one of those brick and mortar retail executives stood up and said, hey, you know what? You got to bring some data to the table. In the end, we need more than a great founder story. That certainly helps. And we've certainly met a lot of engaging founders. And I mean that positively. But in the end, as Sean just said, the retailers are saying, how do I know this is going to sell? Well, how do I know your price is right? How do I know your packaging is going to work? And the other thing that retailers have said, and Tracy and I got this out of the interviews we did with retailers, when they're sitting in a presentation, the comment I'll never forget is a retailer said, when you're meeting with me, tell me something I couldn't possibly know. So we are very excited that Sean chose to visit with us today as they talk about the launch of their emerging brand launch and growth toolkit. So Sean, firsthand, Tracy and I know this is needed with these emerging brands because, again,
Yep.
you can be the most dynamic man or woman on the planet, but eventually you have to have some data to back up what you're saying. So why don't you tell us at a high level what this is and why you guys developed it, and then we'll dig a little deeper into how it can be applied by brands.
Yeah, we're really excited about this. We as a company have a legacy history of working with lots of different emerging brands over the years, and being able to come to market and help them win with these retailers to get their product on the shelf in an effective manner. We're excited to do that. At a high level, our emerging brands launch and growth toolkit provides the ability for brands to bring consumer-based proof of why their product will win with the consumer, which should translate to reducing the risk that a buyer experiences in evaluating your product, right? And if you can reduce that risk with the buyer, it should translate into increasing your chance of success for gaining distribution of those retailers. And at the same time, if you're speaking with investors, it plays the same role as with retailers. It helps investors understand why your product matters and who it's going to sell to. Again, risk reduction for the investors. So, it provides that kind of dual benefit up front at a strategic level. And another side benefit, quite frankly, especially for emerging brands, is it can help inform strategic and tactical decisions that you need to make every day to build upon whatever your growth trajectory are. So it arms you, with the insights and the story to confidently be able to address retailers and investors' questions about why does your product exist, right? And what unmet consumer need does it address?
Yeah.
Who are the consumers of your product and how important are they for the retailer in the marketplace that you're trying to sell into? What are the consumers willing to pay for the product that you are putting in front of them? What do you need to do to ensure strong velocity once it is on the shelf? Again, if you guys, I'm sure most of you that are listening to this podcast, you listen to lots of the podcasts, that Tracy and Bruce put out. And there's a general theme when you talk to people. It's one thing to get distribution, which is hard as hell to get. But once you get it, the celebration doesn't end right there. No. It is about velocity. It is about how do I guarantee strong velocity once it's on the shelf so I can become one of those products that beats the less than 2% track record, right? This comprehensive package that we pull together, right, provides consumer insights about your target consumer. It concept testing for your brand, package testing for the product you're putting on the shelf, price testing for what consumers are willing to pay for it, and the marketing tactics that are likely to succeed in driving sales and velocity for you to hopefully give you that chance at the long-term ongoing success of your brand in store.
So folks, Sean just said about 500 important things there. So Tracy and I talk all the time, and this comes from the retailers we've interviewed and other founders and leaders of the brands. The job really starts once you're accepted. And Sean's also talking about bringing data to the table, not only for retailers, but for your investors. One of the things Tracy and I talk about a lot is trying to do everything you can to remove some uncertainty from your business plan and your approach. There's always going to be black swans or curveballs or a competitive move you just can't know. So Sean rattled off the 4 key components of their toolkit. Concept testing. Is this really new and different, or is it just your mom told you it's new and different? Are the consumers telling you that? Package testing. Tracy and I have heard many, many stories of people that sell out their 4 dozen at the farmer's market, but their package is so elegant and, fine that unless you've got 5 minutes to talk to someone about it, it's hard to understand. It might be too busy, the font might be too fine, the colors are weird, or the packaging is just too fragile. It's one thing to take them from your car to your table at the farmer's market. It's another to put 2 dozen in a shipper and send it to Los Angeles from Philadelphia. So they do that. Also, price testing. We've heard way too many brands go, I'm going to charge a premium. Really? Why? Are you different? Do you have any proof of that? Because if you think about it like a corral, right? A corral with your horses in it. There's the 5 acres that are penned in, and kind of everyone has to stay in there. And if you want to be outside of that, You really need a good reason why, because the higher your price, the smaller your addressable market is going to be, right? And it gets back to understanding what the velocity metrics are that dictate success. Some retailers are dollars per store per week, some are units per store per week. If you're a $20 item in a category that's usually 12, you're probably going to sell fewer items. So you just need to understand all that. And then lastly, does your marketing communications that you're putting together and pouring blood, sweat, tears, and cash into, is it compelling to drive velocity? So, Sean, before we pressed on, I don't know if you wanted to go into any more detail on any of those four components of the toolkit, or if you just want to keep going and we'll touch on them as we roll.
If you don't mind, I actually would like to break them down kind of like you just did, if that's all right.
Please.
Because, for a lot of these emerging brands, these topics around concept or package testing or price testing, or marketing spend benchmarking, are terms that probably most people know. But they may, in fairness, it can be scary, especially if you're not, a CPG veteran that's, been around the block or, spent time working, for Procter and Gamble or Kraft Foods or whatever. But they're not scary approaches. They're not scary methodologies. And they are the types of things that truly help you as you are building your story to take to retail. And quite frankly, helping you determine like, what's the long-term plan for my brand, right? It's one thing to launch a brand, but once you launch as a company, you're probably already thinking, well, what's next? Where else can I go? What other variant can I bring to market that meets a need? And in having these kinds of insights help you with that too. And so concept testing, as Bruce said, is what it sounds like, right? It is designed to measure the different features and attributes of your product, right? A feature and attribute can be performance claims or brand positioning or product usage, okay? And the methodology that we use really allows you to score each of those features or attributes and how the consumer perceives them, okay? And more importantly, it compares that against competition. So now you've got this information that says, my concept scores like this, and it scores better than my competitors for these reasons, which now gives you differentiation, which is one of the things that retailers are looking for. But it really starts to help answer that question, why this product wins with consumers. Okay, so you get to answer a lot of very simple questions about why my product wins and how am I different than things that are otherwise on the shelf in the category that I'm competing in. Package testing, again, I think it's pretty straightforward what it is, right? It measures the different packaging elements and how each of them influence that consumer choice and perceived value. Bruce, you made a comment about, everyone wants to be premium priced, and that's great. What you want to be is priced at a point that consumers are willing to pay for. Okay, that might be premium, that might not be premium. And the idea of this fancy package that you go to the farmer's market and you sell and you're able to do that, understanding how consumers might actually view that on the shelf in comparison to other products that it's sitting next to, really good to understand. And so packaging elements, the size of the package, the material used for the packaging, the design style. Is it a square box? Is it a curve-shaped bottle? What is it? Sustainability claims, color schemes, all of these things are part of the packaging process, and it really helps to communicate to the retailer and justify, the attributes of the package that you ended up using and how it drives consumer preference, right? And, I would say equally, if not more important, it actually tells how packaging fits in with your concept and with other things that you're doing with your brand. And it helps you understand the trade-offs that consumers are willing to make. I'm pushing an eco-friendly packaging, a product that, a package that, is extremely eco-friendly. Okay. Do the consumers that want to buy your category, your product in the category they're buying in, do they want to pay that premium for that? You may think it's right. You may have your cousin or your neighbor telling you it's wonderful and beautiful. How are the average consumers that walk into their local Walmart or Kroger or Dollar General, how are they going to respond to that, right? And so you'll be able to clearly communicate this to the retailers, when you take that in. Price testing, it is what it is, right? This is really measuring the price sensitivity of your product in the eyes of the consumer based on the full context of your brand offering, right? So we're looking at the different combination of your attributes, the features, the messaging, the packaging, and we're able to incorporate multiple price points so that we get this price sensitivity and a consumer's willingness to pay for your product, right? This allows you to walk in the door when you're pitching to Kroger, Walmart, whoever, you can justify the recommended selling price that you're putting forward to them, right? Because you're going to say, hey, I want to sell this for $7.99. Okay. And you're probably going to get asked the question from the buyer, why did you pick $7.99? Is that the right price? This provides you where you can say, we've tested multiple price points from $5.99 to $9.99, and the one that resonates best with the consumer and drives the most volume is $7.99, whatever that number is, right? I want to be clear, this is not a price elasticity model, okay, which measures historical sales related to historical pricing, right? It's a predictive model based on consumer preferences, but it is a kick-ass predictive model that knows and can set the stage for being able to explain to a retailer why you're recommending the price and why consumers will respond positively to it. And then the last thing, that you talked about, that's included in here, this idea of understanding the target consumer and being able to explain why the marketing program that you're putting forward is the right marketing program, right? Out of our toolkit, you understand the consumer, you understand who they are, who's most likely to purchase your brand, do they shop in the retailer that you're pitching to, right? So that's really, really important. And are they differentiated in the category that you're competing in, right? In regard to marketing tactics, we will help you simulate marketing spend plans, right? Using our baselines and benchmarks, we do a lot of analytics around marketing analytics, marketing mix analytics, pricing analytics, trade promotion analytics. And so we've got these wonderful baselines and benchmarks that we can actually work with you to simulate what your spend plan is so that you can walk in confidently. And when the retailer says, well, why are you spending this? Is that going to generate the velocity? We can say, based on industry benchmarks and baselines, we know that this amount of spend or this type of program is going to generate sales velocity. It'll help pull the product off of your shelf, to meet and exceed kind of the velocity targets that you've set as a retailer, right? And so all of those things are part of this packaged solution that we put together. And I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but it's really designed to provide you with the information that will make you stand out and look different when you're walking into these retailers, maybe versus other emerging brands that are coming in and selling a founder's vision. And there's nothing wrong with founder's visions, nothing at all. Or someone who's selling, an Amazon story. Hey, we got it on Amazon and we sold pretty well on Amazon. Nothing wrong with that. That is awesome. This really fills out the story pipeline. It reduces that risk for that retailer to say, you know what? Not only do I like your story, not only am happy that you've got some pre-sales maybe in an online channel or in some sort of alternate channel. You've got fact-based information that makes me feel more comfortable that this product will sell on the shelf if I give you space.
That is awesome, Sean, and it's so needed. And I'm going to put on, as Bruce says, my Grim Reaper hat for a second, because I want to synthesize a couple key points that you made that I think are really important for our audience. One is, it's not enough anymore to just have a great founder story. It's just not. And we talked about that early on how hard it is to get on the retail shelf. The other thing two things I wanted to mention that I think are so critical. One is understanding who your consumer is, not just guessing, but having facts. And we see time and time again small emerging brands thinking they know who their consumer is, but not really knowing or winging it. And you get into a retailer meeting and they're like, well, how do you know that your consumer is a millennial? And the way you change that dialogue with with your research is it is the millennial. And I understand that that's who a really big target is for you based on my research, Mr. Retailer. So my product consumer matches who you're trying to attract. Now there's a different discussion with the retailer. The second thing that's really important is the price testing. We see this again time and time again. Um, Brand founders saying, "Oh well, my product's premium price," but they don't know why. And they go into a retailer meeting and they say, "Well, what's your MSRP? $7.99." Well, that's interesting from the retailer's perspective because the highest price point in my category is $5.99. So can you tell me why I should price your product $2 more than anybody else? And again, totally different conversation if you've got the data to bring it up. So I'm putting on my Grim Reaper hat and kind of the rubber meets the road, but I wanted to really quantify that into the hard facts. But
yeah, hey Tracy, sorry. Two other quick points there to build off what you're saying and what Sean just said. In all the interviews Tracy and I have done, especially with veterans who have worked within the industry and the buyers, one of the first things they look at if sales get off to a slow start is the packaging. And that surprised me. Okay. But we've heard that from too many smart people for that not to be something to be able to address up front, like Tracy's saying. The other thing is when a buyer, especially in brick and mortar retail, brings on a new brand, they're taking, being a bit dramatic here, they're taking on a bit of career risk, right? Because they have to knock out some item that's selling at least something, and then they put you in. And you need to be able to at least match what they just took out. Otherwise, why would they do this? And these components of the toolkit Sean and Big Chalk are bringing to the market help that buyer explain to their manager why this makes sense, right? Well, the buyer came in and he had, or the brand founder came in and he had a llama. What? We don't care. We don't sell llamas. But he comes in and he's able to address the pricing question. They have money. They have a good demand plan. So anyway, I think so many of these elements provide the facts that help solidify why your founder story and your idea is worth their time to consider and hopefully put in. Sorry, Trace.
no, that's all good stuff. So let's talk a little bit and touch a little bit about your methodologies, but also
Sure.
dispel maybe the myth that some brands may have about, oh, I'm going to be asked where this data is coming from, or I'm going to be asked a definition of something that I don't know. So tell us a little bit about how this toolkit dispels that myth and maybe a touch on your methodologies a little bit and dispel that myth that the methodologies, this is not rocket science and something that if you study it and work with your team, you'll be able to explain it really easily to a retailer.
And that's great. Listen, and I think, at the core of what we do, right? We use conjoint analytic methodology for this type of work. And a lot of people haven't worked with conjoint or may not even know what conjoint is. And I'm not, I don't necessarily, I'll give a brief description of it here. But conjoint is not scary. And actually, it's been around for over 50 years. It is a proven gold standard methodology that brands have been using in this CPG retail space, like I said, since the early 70s, right? And to put it as simply as I can, conjoint is nothing more than a trade-off based research methodology, period. The consumer goes in, they see multiple combinations of products in front of them. with different attributes or messaging, and they vote which one are they most likely to buy. And they look at multiple versions across the set. And the good news is the laws of large numbers, when you get a sample size that is decently large and they've had lots of opportunities to choose, and it's randomly shown to people, you start to get a very good deep understanding of, okay, what combinations do consumers like? And then we can decompose, well, within those combinations of products, what was it that we believe was driving that consumer's preference, choice when they were making them? And this used to be done, guys, again, I'm an old guy, I've been doing this since the early 90s. This type of work used to be done on paper, paper research and stuff, which was a pain in the ass. With all of the advances in online capabilities, you can really learn an awful lot and show a lot to these consumers. And consumers are way more prepared to evaluate things via an online platform to be able to do this. And at the end of the day, what I would say is, you theoretically don't need to define what conjoint is when you're presenting this to the retailer. We'll help you. We'll give you the simple words and the simple 1 or 2 sentence definition of what it is that you can use in layman's terms. But we actually provide you output that's written in layman's terms that you can just drop into your story, right? And so we make it as seamless and easy as possible to help you, because what you care most about is that you've got bullet points and data that support the story of why this brand matters to consumers, why it's different to consumers in the category you're competing, why consumers are willing to pay whatever price point that you are recommending, and why your marketing plan is going to actually support a sales velocity approach at the retailer that will guarantee that this product stays on the shelf for years. We're going to help you do that. We make it easy. We put it in very simple terms so that you can explain it, and we're there to help you along the way.
Yeah. So one thing, and I know we're going to touch on this in a second, but Sean kind of opened the door. So I just want to make sure the folks understand in the teaser for today's show where Sean sent over the summary of the toolkit, folks, part of the service that they're offering is a specific number of hours where they're going to help you understand and interpret and make sure you're 100% comfortable, not only with what the data says, but how you can explain it. So don't worry. It's all in the package that Sean and the team are putting forward. And I know we're going to get that in a minute, but I thought that would be good to get there. So Sean, while we're debunking myths, and you just touched on it a little bit, I know, back in the day, when I was brand manager and, director of marketing in a couple of places, the only downside of market research, we've always had a lot of respect for it due to the training I was fortunate to receive as a younger person getting going. But can you debunk the myth that everything in market research takes 6 to 9 months to come in and is going to cost $500,000? Can you tell us where we are in the new world?
So listen, the reality is that historically, if you broke apart these approaches, right, and looked at them, whether in isolation or in some sort of combination, right, they did used to take too long and they did used to cost too much. Okay, the myth is based on a fact, right, from history, right? Especially when you work with the legacy research providers that are out there. I used to be one of them. I worked at IRI, I worked at Nielsen. I was that legacy research provider. I was the one that was delivering things in 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it was, at hundreds of thousands of dollars of cost, but
you guys brought really good bagels and coffee to the meeting.
We knew how to bribe our clients better than anybody with food. I will tell you right now, food was always the winner. But with all of the enhancements in online research and data science, right? It really has allowed nimble expert firms who are using current best-in-class methodology an advantage in time and cost, right? We're able to deliver meaningful, useful insights with actionable content that you can kind of drop, play, and run with, in 4 to 5 weeks, okay, at a fraction of the cost, right? And we purposely built this toolkit to be delivered in 4 to 5 weeks, to be at a fraction of those costs. And we're all, and you always get in trouble when you start putting prices on things because you either scare people away or not. But this holistic package, if you looked at it, and went to legacy providers that provide services like this, you're talking in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to probably get all of this. And we're able to provide this for under $40,000, right? We believe, now, I'm not saying 40,000 or under 40,000 isn't a big chunk of money. That's a lot of money for a lot of people. But at least it opens the door for emerging brands to think about, how do I enhance my founder story, my online selling story, with the information that will hopefully push me over the top with these buyers, to help convince them to take my product on and put my product on the shelf. And so we were really focused on doing something that responded quickly, fraction of the cost, to really open the doors and give you guys a chance, give the emerging brands a chance to consider it. Okay. Not every emerging brand is going to do this. We understand that, right? Should they do it? They probably should. Okay. But that's an individual choice. We're trying to make it approachable for all of you.
Yeah.
And,
So
and
before Tracy goes, sorry, Trace, the two things here that Sean just said, in all the brands that Tracy and I have interviewed and all the brands we've seen over the course of these travels, both career-wise and just with Road to Retail, the two places brands kind of any size, but especially emerging brands, try to cut corners money-wise is data, whether that's sales data or what Sean's offering in the toolkit here. And the other is sales help, thinking that they can figure it out themselves. They'd rather fail for free than secure someone who really knows how to work with publics. So, these are two areas where, again, all money's precious, and it should be, whether you're PepsiCo or Bruce's awesome cookie company. But those are two places where when you cut those corners, you're increasing your risk that you're going to do something wrong. Sorry, Tracy.
no, I was just going to chime in and say, I don't know, as we've talked about how competitive it is today, how buyers want data, how you can afford not to do this as a small emerging brand. And I just wanted to make that plug for this because I think it's important. But we
Well,
talked a
well, well,
little.
well, and not just that, Tracy. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you know, it's a one-time event,
Right,
project, cost that you can apply to multiple retailers.
of
So,
course.
it's something that you can use, not just at a single retail presentation, as you are going to retailers, as you're rolling your product out, you can bring this same story to multiple retailers. The story can be used when you're talking to investors, right? So that's an
Right.
alternate way. And the information that's included, you can use to help you refine and improve what you're bringing to market, from a strategic and tactical perspective as a brand for multiple years. So it is a one-time kind of project. It's a one-time expense, but it serves a lot of different masters and a lot of different benefits it can deliver to you. And you need to think about it as the end benefit is some X, 3, 5, 10X value, 100X value, to what the, upfront time and cost might be.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Sean, we touched on this a little bit, but talk to us a little bit about how Big Chalk stays involved once the data is delivered.
Yeah, listen, this is as I said at the beginning, we started Big Chalk 9 years ago, right, to fill a gap in the market around, expert consulting support, helping brands, really drive utilization and success out of their data, technology, all this stuff that people are selling in the marketplace. And so core to our culture and our mission, right, is that ongoing consulting support to help our clients, our partners be successful, right? We believe data and insights without expert consulting support is wasted and or misused, right? And so, we provide that consulting support not only to talk the brands through the findings, but we help the brands integrate them into their sales pitches or investor decks. We can help them be confidently able to speak to the insights and recommendations that come out of the work, right? Um, the emerging brand partners will get presentation ready PowerPoint slides they can drop right into their pitch deck, right? And again, like we said, we'll help you integrate it into your story. So we'll take it and we can work with you on how to weave the wording so that you have a coherent story that starts from the beginning to the end and works well together. And listen, every one of our partners with the toolkit, you get the full data output from the study, right? We're focused in on a couple key things to arm you with the information to be able to go and be successful in pitching your product. There's additional data that is available through the study itself that you can utilize as an emerging brand to dig in and query that data for other insights, other things to help you as you're moving forward as a brand, right? So it can, like I said, it can be used to help with brand strategy, brand planning, innovation planning, long term, whatever the case might be. And so we're there with you. You have an expert consultant that will be attached to this project, working with you throughout the course of it. And we're going to help you not only with presentation ready content, but we're going to help you tell the story. We've done this with our clients. We can be on the sales call with the retailer if you want us to be, to answer tough questions or to present, some of the content. Okay. That isn't typical or normal, but it is a service that we do provide. And it is a service that several of our clients have utilized over the years.
That's awesome.
That's
I love
great.
that.
Hey, so Sean, many of the emerging brands that are out there either are starting direct to consumer with their own website or might be Amazon only brands. Do you think the output from the toolkit applies to these brands as well to help them drive their business, or is it really only for something for the brands that are in brick and mortar?
So, the short answer is this approach is applicable to all consumer facing brands, period. It doesn't matter where they start or where they sell. The insights here will help you. And let me give you an example. Okay. We did work like this for a network marketing brand. Okay. Think products that are sold through an individual distributor network like Amway or Mary Kay or Pampered Chef, right? This brand wanted to get into an online marketing and selling position, but they really weren't sure how best to position the brand or how to price the brand or how to message the brand without damaging their core network marketing infrastructure, right?
Mm.
We did the work, and our research provided them with a positioning and a story that allowed them to effectively launch on Amazon. I'm going to be very specific there, to launch their product in a differentiated way on Amazon without meaningfully cannibalizing their established network marketing partners. And so this was something that was, call it direct to consumer because of the network marketing component. Okay. And they wanted to go online, but they didn't want to disrupt or cannibalize that DTC thing. It was the heritage of their business and their brand. And so, I mean, the key for me, if you're a brand that's trying to sell into a new channel or a retailer, I will tell you this approach will improve your selling story, which will improve your success rate for gaining distribution, period.
So Sean,
Sounds
talk to
good
us.
because many
Love that.
brands also eventually want to move from Amazon or DTC. So
Sure.
not only does the toolkit help them right now, it can also help start laying pipe for their
Yeah.
future expansion plans.
Yeah. So Sean, talk to us a little bit about how big does a brand need to be before they would work with you guys? And is this even applicable to somebody in pre-launch that hasn't even launched yet?
Yes and yes. So first off, size doesn't matter, right? I mean, size matters if I'm the brand, right? Because there's a component of I generate X amount of revenue, I generate X amount of profit. And then, we talked about this earlier, how do I allocate my profit, okay, to growth, right? And so, that's always a personal choice. But we've worked with brands that are as small as 3 million, $4 million in sales. And I know that may sound like a lot. But size really doesn't matter because, um, you know, the research it's consumer based, consumer preference driven, and it arms you with that information to confidently go talk to the retailers. And it doesn't matter if this is an existing product, so something that's in the market selling today, or if it's a product that you're developing, right? Pre-launch, right? In fact, some would argue it might make sense to do some of this research pre-launch, especially if it can inform and help you adjust anything in your messaging, in your branding, in your packaging, right? Pre-launch, it might even be better for you pre-launch because you can get a sense for, oh, this thing that I'm talking about on the package, no one cares about. Maybe I don't need to mention this because I want to simplify, the front of my box or the front of my bottle or whatever it is. So existing or pre-launch, it works because again, we're putting concepts in front of consumers and they're reacting to it. The key is we work with you to come up with concepts and attributes and prices. We test them with the consumers. We do all the work, the heavy lifting. We just partner with you around what it is that you have and what you're trying to do and what you think you might be willing to do over time. And then at the end, we deliver you that PowerPoint ready insights that you can drop in and drop in ready to use.
Awesome. Bruce?
Yeah, it's never too early to have some facts and some knowledge. It'll help you avoid errors later. Okay, Sean, given your extensive background across all components of CPG, guy comes up to you at a conference and says, "Hey, Sean, I'm thinking of starting a CPG brand. Aside from run, what are the first things you tell them?"
Uh, I tell them three things, right? These are the three first things I would tell someone. And it's themes that we've already talked about. Understand who your consumer is and why they matter to retailers that you want to sell in, right? If you can't do this, the hill you have to climb becomes significantly taller, okay, when pitching your idea or product to a retail buyer or an investor. So you really have to be grounded in understanding your consumer. Why are they important? You need to, number two, you need to be able to clearly differentiate your offering versus others on the shelf. Okay. Why will consumers buy my product versus the other 50 that are on the shelf in the category that I'm competing in? You need to be able to differentiate yourself. Whatever that differentiation is, doesn't even matter. You need a reason for being. And it's all about sales velocity. You have got to, I always say this, right? You've got to do everything you can afford to do to drive consistent sales velocity, right? Don't do everything you can do, everything you can afford to do to drive sales velocity, right? So that's your trade plan, that's your online marketing. If you're doing any kind of online marketing, do as much as you can realistically afford to drive that velocity. Because if you don't, 6 months, 9 months down the road, those retailers are going to say, "Hey, we have to start pulling your product off the shelf. We're going to send it all back to you, and we're not going to pay you for what we had in inventory." And that opens a whole hornet's nest of problems for you as a brand, right? That you just don't want to deal with.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, we're rounding third, Sean, and heading home, as Bruce says. So tell us, who's had the greatest influence on your career and why?
It's okay, and I love these last questions that you ask people on these podcasts. I really do. And so I'm actually, if you don't mind, I would like to mention three people
Sure.
that have had the greatest influence in my career. Two of them were at Ralston Purina, a guy named John Bruce and his boss George Quinn. Um, you know, George and John, they took a chance on me. I was a sales guy, right? But I was a sales guy that had a knack for fast fact-based selling in the early 90s. Um, and they brought me in the very, very early days of category management to a corporate role in St. Louis. And it is there that I truly learned a couple things: strategic data analysis and how to frame data into stories for the big retailers. John and George were unbelievable human beings. And I look back at my career and you know, the foundation of who I was, comes from them. And then the other person is a guy named Ed Cunley, longtime industry guy, a lot of years sales guy on the brand side. I got to work with him on that side when he was at Pharmacy Upjohn. But then I also worked for him at IRI when he moved over to the IRI side. And you know, he actually convinced me to take a job with IRI. I was working for Pharmacia. Pfizer had just bought Pharmacia. They'd offered me a move out to New Jersey. And my wife and I really didn't want to move to Jersey at the time. And I was looking for other jobs. And he knew who I was. And he said, "Hey, I'm going to IRI. You should give it a try." And that faith and belief in me, because I had no idea. I'd never been on the selling side of analytics and research. But his trust and belief in me, that was the pathway to who Big Chalk is today. And so I can't say enough good things about Ed Cunley, and he's mentored so many people in this industry over the years. I'm just one of a very long list, but he was unbelievable.
Awesome. All right, Bruce, the big question.
Well, we enjoy, sorry, we enjoy that question because it's always, just thinking for myself, you think back to all the people that took time to teach you stuff, the good and the bad. And especially when you're younger, it's like, man, I didn't know anything about anything. Why did anyone hire me and give me money? But I'm grateful they did. Okay, Sean. So the final topic of the day, who is your favorite sports team, band, or brand, and why do you support them?
I'm going to give you two quick answers. Sports team, Chicago Cubs. Pure and simple. I grew up in the Midwest. I've been watching them since the 70s. I lived through the good, the bad, and the ugly. Nothing's chased me away. I bleed Cubby blue, and just love them. From a brand perspective, Heinz Ketchup. Heinz Ketchup was the brand that was in my house as a kid, right? And the taste is distinct and great, to the point where I have chosen to not use ketchup when I'm at an event or a restaurant if it is not Heinz. I am probably too loyal to them, in fairness, but by gosh, if you ask my wife and she said, "Hey, we're moving to a new place," the first item I would buy would be Heinz ketchup to put in my shelf.
That's great. I love that. That is
Sean,
classic.
Sean, we have some therapists that listen to the show. We'll have them contact you about this Heinz thing. But that is a great iconic brand, and it also is a bit of a lesson to old brand managers like me. You don't always have to change everything.
No.
Okay. All right. So Sean, thank you so much for your time here today. How can people learn more about Big Chalk, the launch and growth toolkit, and get in touch with you?
So first and foremost, they can go to bigchalk.co, the website. They'll learn more about us there. You can connect with me or message me on LinkedIn. I'm Sean, Sean, Ogar, Ogar. I believe I'm the only Sean Ogar on LinkedIn. So you should be pretty easy to find me, but connect with me and or message me online. Or you can send an email to emergingbrandswin@bigchalk.co. emergingbrandswin@bigchalk.co. And either I or someone from my team will get back to you within the same day. Okay. And we can schedule a time to talk, and we can talk in more detail about what you're doing, what you're trying to do, and how we can help you with this toolkit.
All right, folks, we'll put some of these contact infos in the show notes of this episode. But thank you for coming on today, Sean, and sharing with us, break the news of the Big Chalk Emerging Brand Toolkit. Again, Tracy and I at that, I'll never forget at that ECRM event about Founders Day and brands, those retailers saying, you got to bring me some facts. You got to bring me some data. And you've debunked that everything takes 6 months and costs $500,000. So thank you so much for doing this service to the industry. And hopefully a lot of people will pick up the phone or send you guys some texts to learn more about it. All right, Tracy, we had a Cub fan today, so hopefully they're going to fly the W a little more than the last couple of years. So bring us home with the big finish. I hope your arm is loose.
It is. It is. I'm coming out of the bullpen. I'm coming out of the bullpen. The right-hander. Sean, this has been great. Such a much needed toolkit and information that the industry needs, and small emerging brands especially. So thank you again for sharing this with us. Audience, thanks for joining us today. Please continue to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube. We post every Tuesday on LinkedIn, and also check out our website. You can find all our episodes there as well. And that is www.road2retail.com. Great seeing you again, Bruce. And Sean, thank you again so much.
Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend.
Good luck.